Hello, here we are once again with Mookie Tenembaum. We are exploring through these videos, as you know, his philosophy, his disillusionism, and his theory about human behavior as a sort of running away from suffering always, nostalgic theory. And what we are trying to do week after week now is to analyze current events as the pandemic is still very much going on. We are in mid-July 2021 now, but trying to analyze things that are happening around us from a philosophical point of view. We spoke last week about vaccination and the rollout and compulsory or optional vaccines. And in a way, carrying on from that discussion, we are going to try and see today what happens with the pandemic in the context of anonymous societies, in societies where we have large groupings of people, large cities, when almost everyone around us is unknown to us. So that anonymity necessarily has an effect on the way we deal with the pandemic in particular and the way in which we live in general. But we are going to try and look at this from a philosophical point of view.
Well, as we said last week, and we've been telling in many of the videos, there is a particularity. There is a special conditions that this pandemic has that almost no other things besides HIV is that you can be contagious, you can infect other people, even if you don't have the symptoms. In fact, now that you are vaccinated, it's even more common of people who have no symptoms to be contagious about others. That makes it very. That's the reason we're talking about anonymity and about how you call it, anonymity. Yes, the situation in which you name the nameivity. There is two areas when we're talking about the sickness. One is the person you are contagious to, you infect. Yes, that could happen. Your cousin, your wife, your children. Or the second phase is that if somebody you have contracted the disease from somebody, that somebody probably had some symptoms if it was any other sicknesses. So his anonymity is only one, I would say, only on the basis of the name. I don't know. We are not on a first name or a second or a last name relationship, but we can really know who did it. In this case, nobody knows. In fact, really, never you assume. Yes, you meet with somebody who has has pustules in the face and those terrible things, and you get to. You probably got it from that person. It's not 100%, but that's about it. But let me explain why anonymity and all this is so relevant. Because societies until the cities became very common, because there were some cities always, but that they were living in a city conferred people anonymity. Before that, if you live in a little village, everybody knows everybody. When I mean everybody knows everybody, that even if you don't know that person, he knows somebody you know. There's only one stop in that airline, in that flight between you and the other person. So they know, everybody knows each other. And that means that the way you enforce things it's by shame. Shame works very well because they know who you are. And not only shame, somebody can come to you and says, you did this or you did that, and you have to pay for that, whatever that means. So people were very, they were always worried and trying not to do things that may harm a third party, mainly for that reason. When you come into the town, when you are becoming a town person, when you are becoming anonymous, that changes the whole thing. Because now nobody knows who you are. And unless you have pustules in your face, as you say, you can really go around being contagious to anybody. And nobody knows. There is no way to know about it. What do you think about this, Florence?
No, as as you spoke, I remember that I've heard this many times. Of course, I live in a huge city with millions of inhabitants, but I know about people living in small villages even today. And under these laws that in our country, for instance, imposed lockdowns after you quarantines of several days after you come from abroad, from an international trip, of course, people in the little villages were completely unable to go outside after a long trip because everyone knew, listen, you came from abroad, go back home. People, I have stories, people yelling at each other, go back to your place. In a huge city, this is completely impossible. No one would ever know if I've been abroad or not. So in a way, what I want to ask you is, what resources do we have in an anonymous situation, in an urban situation, in order to prevent this type of, one would say, shameful behavior? But you don't have shame to go about. So what are the tools for preventing these lines of behavior in our societies?
Well, I can come up with four ways it's done. The most common one is police will come to check if you are at home, and that's how it could work. It doesn't have to go to the home of each one of the persons in quarantine. It's enough that everybody knows that police may come, and it's in a higher likelihood. And the punishment of not being in quarantine is not just $20 fine. It's something stronger. The stronger it is, the better is the response. This is enforcement. This we know, and enforcement is, I would say, penal enforcement or criminal enforcement in the world, in the towns. Of course, is central. Yes, in the little villages that doesn't almost exist. Of course, there is people, but people. It's not about the law. It's about shame. Yes. The second, the other three ways is to appeal to one of the three things that we all are, or almost everybody has. One, empathy. So they say, listen, you see this guy, he's an old man. If you go around and you may, remember, you think you are asymptomatic. You don't know that you are COVID. You can ignore it if you want to, really. But if you go and you do that to this guy probably will end up with an oxygen or intubated or dead. That's empathy. That will be the empathic way. The second way will be to the close people of you, what's called the sentimental thing. Be careful, your father, your mother. You always say it. You may be contagious to your father, your mother. They say it now to the younger people who are now leading the infections, both in the UK and in Spain. I mean, they are leading there. They're the ones that more infect. They tell them, listen, you go home, your father or your mother has maybe one dose of the vaccine or none, and you may get sick. So sentiment is a second way. And the third one is the most sophisticated one, is what I call computer number 3, or the moral conscience. That means the appeal will be see what you can do and how would you feel? Would you feel guilt if you are transmitting to a third party? These are all the three, I would say, the three weapons in the arsenal of the states or the societies that want to deal with anonymous contagion.
There is, of course, this image that comes to my mind of losing oneself in a crowd. And we know that people in a crowd will do stuff they wouldn't do if they were alone. I'm not only speaking about going against the lockdown or not wearing a mask under the pandemic. I'm thinking about littering or loitering or throwing stones. And my guess is, of course, the crowd and anonymity work in the first sense you referred, in the sense that it will be harder to punish me and to find me and to get me. But does it not also help in the second sense? losing myself in a crowd, wouldn't it work from a subjective point of view in terms of not feeling guilty after the consequences of my actions?
But there are several ways you may avoid feeling guilty. First of all, think about it. The moment you are being told, appealing to your empathy, to the sentiments, or to your moral conscience, the more they're doing that, they are trying to ruin your sleepwalking. Let me remind what is sleepwalking. Yes, that's what we do 95% of the day. During sleepwalk, you don't suffer. They make it harder for you to sleepwalk. Now, really, this will be a fight between them trying. It's like sleeping. Think about sleeping. They're trying to wake you up, and you're trying to sleep. They're making noise, and you are just covering yourself with the pill. I mean, it is the fight. But since you could not fight it consciously, since you could not say, I don't care, because you could say, I don't care. And the trial, I don't care if who am I in fact, but that's not what's happening. What happens is that I convince myself I'm not contagious. I have been vaccinated. I cannot be contagious. Of course, we know it's not true. I already had it. I felt it. I cannot transmit it because I already had it. I remember 3 months ago, I was feeling terribly bad. I had it. Did you check yourself? No, I don't. And this is exactly the point. They need enough pretext and enough defense against all these attacks to be able to sleepwalk. And then they don't think about it again. Now, where is this all this information residing? How all this defensive information residing? In the narrative. Remember, each one of us has a narrative, and that narrative allows us to interact with the outside in a way that we suffer the less. And the narrative has, of course, real parts, and they have, of course, illusionary parts. Some of them is I was sick. The other one is he got sick from somebody else. That's not me, I'm sure. It doesn't matter. If that person could muster enough stainless steel to insulate himself from all the arguments, that's it. Then they can sleepwalk. So this is really a war between those who don't want you to sleepwalk, and they want you to do what they want them to do, maybe to sleepwalk as they say, which is quite more complicated. And your aim to try to sleepwalk. This is a fight. You see, contagious here in the issue of contagion, it's two different things. One is the biological way. I am contagious or not. It's a fact. We are not all the very difficult fact to ascertain, but it's still a fact. And the other one is the contagion from the subjective point of view, the disillusionist or the illusionist way of contagion. This is different, because it's not really the biological part. It's close to. It's not exactly there.
To see if I get it right, what you're saying is that from the point of view of empathy, feelings, and the pranks of a moral consciousness, the problem is not whether I was or was not contagious to others. The problem is if I actually think I was contagious or not. And if I don't think I was, if I don't believe I was, I'm in the clear. I won't suffer all these forms of subjective pain.
I will add the word, if you succeed in ignoring, if you succeed in believing. But again, this has to be done without you consciously doing it. If not, we're talking about indifference, just active indifference. I don't care. But we're not talking about that. It has to be done in a way in which I have to believe it without being. If it's enough, it has the how do you say in an atomic bomb the material enough fissile material. There is a certain
the critical mass.
Critical mass. If there is critical mass, thank you for that. If this is the critical mass of pretext are enough, we talked about pretext a couple of weeks ago. If you have enough, that works. But you are not supposed to invent it. It's not like somebody comes to you and say, "Why you are late?" You remember, and then you start inventing a story. That doesn't work. That wouldn't work. It only works if you yourself look anonymous to yourself. You anonymize yourself to yourself. It's an insulation. That's the way it is.
Yeah, not only I need to lose myself in a crowd in order not to be seen by the state, the players, the police. I need to lose myself in the crowd in order not to be seen by my own moral consciousness, by my own feelings. But of course, the first works if I do it intentionally. This second one, as you say, has to be somehow automatic, has to happen without me knowing.
And it does. The interesting thing that you hear people saying, they've been told, listen, if you have got the vaccine, you are still contagious. And I heard people saying, oh, this is not true. Why? If not, why are we vaccinating ourselves? Well, it's not to end up in the hospital or dead. That's why you are supposed to be vaccinating yourself. It's for your own body, not for the rest. I think we talked about it last time. I say it's two different things. But you have to. The story cannot be told by you. The story has to be incorporated in your narrative. It's not something you can come up with or you should come up with. But of course, some people say there is no sickness. I mean, the list of pretexts are very big. But I think in this case, anonymity has to be addressed because we are talking now about an anonymous situation. And sometimes I think it's being forgotten and they still treat people in a way that it really doesn't work, shame and so forth, that it's already outdated.
It's very interesting. We are out of time for today, but as it happened with the previous video, I think we'll carry on this analysis into the next, because as we look at the pandemic evolving, some subjects are bound to reappear.
Listen, we will keep running away from suffering, and this is one of the ways we do it.
Perfect. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed the video, please like it, comment and subscribe.